All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Board members present: Jack, Steve, myself, Ted, Nicole, and Nick. No board members absent. Administration present. We have Kate, Marquez, Christy, and Vicky. We also have Nicole and Jennifer with us this evening as well. We have no visitors. Could we stand for the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just so different without the Scouts.
I know.
Not the same.
It's definitely not the same. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Steve? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. President's report. I'd just like to thank everybody. I know it's summer. We just spent an hour and a half with Shayna. It was a great, I feel like, productive meeting. So thank you for carving some time out to just learn a little bit and continue that. And hopefully that will just continue to help us be a little bit more effective and be aware of kind of our roles and responsibilities as board members. And hopefully that's just an annual thing where we can continue to update, learn, and grow together. Steve, clerk's report, please.
I have no correspondence whatsoever, Mr. President.
Any CISA 2 updates?
And for CISA 2, we had our meeting last week. It's always the third Tuesday with the Board of Control. And as you know, we have some new members, and there was nothing out of the ordinary to present at this time.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to Nicole.
All right. I would like to present the treasurer's report dated June 2023. I'll read the ending balance for each of our accounts. Please note that the credit cards and capital improvement fund accounts at Community State Bank were consolidated into existing accounts in May 2023 and will no longer show on the treasurer's report moving forward. CSB operating account with a balance of $380,070.59. CSB Flex account with a balance of $51,286.10. Petty cash with a balance of $300. LGIP with a balance of $2,410,718.21. With a balance of $22,309,687.48. Grand cash and investment asset total of $25,152,062.38. Payment of accounts payable bills. I'd like to present the payment of accounts payable bills dated June 1st, June 30th, 2023. This includes paper checks numbered 71903 to 71981, wire transfer checks numbered 2022-01569 to 2022-01673, and ACH checks numbered 223-300104 to 223-300-118 for a total of $1,134,968.22.
All right, I'll hop on for the monthly revenue and expense report. So now we're in June, or this is the June report, so that's the last month of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th. So as you can see, everything should be close to 100% based on what we approved with an updated budget last meeting. Revenues actually came in slightly higher at 101.26 in total. And that was mainly due to higher state aid from our mental health program aid. So that was the main reason that was above. So it's always a good thing when revenue's a little higher. And then on the next slide, On the expense side, it's always good. So we want the revenues to be higher than budgeted, and it's always better when the expenses are a little below what's budgeted. And so that was the case with us for this fiscal year. So 97.61% is what we spent in total compared to the budget. And the main difference there is that our Fund 27 transfer ended up being slightly lower than we expected. And that was due to we got high cost special aid. So any students that have special costs that are over $30,000, we get additional aid from the state. That came in at a higher percent. And so that boosted our Fund 27 revenue. And then we had to transfer less from Fund 10 to 27. So that's why the overall expenses are down a little bit. And then the one kind of big decision we'll have to make tonight is the Fund 46 transfer. And that will come up later in the action items. But as of what we approved for an updated budget at the last meeting, we spent 97.61%. And so then that means that we have, when the revenue is higher and the expenses are lower, that means you have a positive balance. So then that's where we would decide how much we want to transfer to Fund 46 versus how much we want to roll over into fund balance. Mm-hmm. Any questions on revenues and expenses?
Thank you.
Okay.
I like those numbers.
Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have one question.
Yep.
Check 71908, the transportation for Central. We can't go into specifics just because of its nature.
Sure.
Why would we be paying Central for transportation?
So Central handles all the private school transportation. So if anybody is a
Gotcha.
Yep. And so they're just the liaison, and we
Didn't know that they, okay.
Yeah,
That was it.
Yep.
That was it. Okay.
I move to approve the consent agenda items A through D as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Nothing? No public comments?
All right, I apologize. I have a little coughing attack. So every year we have to update our academic standards. The academic standards report I put in your packet, and as we discussed earlier, we'll have that packet provided for you the Friday before so you can review it. But the standards are not the same. If Patty were here, she's just at home on personal business, but she would talk about the review that we're looking at right now. Next with our staff will be social studies. So we're reviewing those standards, but we're following the Wisconsin state standards. It's the same as it is every single year. What I provided you in your packet, though, is the process by which they go through the review cycle. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the review cycle that we're in tandem with DPI, it provides you that as well. But what Patty will be presenting to you within the next couple of months is the work with her department, specifically social studies, because of the new standards, and we'll be needing to look at curriculum, and that will be a pretty in-depth process with teachers. We'll get that will be probably most likely a CAC will work on that, but if you're interested in that, the board packet has more information about that as well.
You're saying at some point there will be like, these are the state standards and then these are like the essentials at Salem?
Yes. And you're about to hear in our strategic plan update, that's part of the work. That's year one. It's going to go through year 1, 2, and 3, and it's just going to continue as we update standards. But specifically, social studies we're targeting now, but every single grade level will have, here are the key standards or the power standards for Salem. Here are the common formative assessments we're going to be using to assess those standards. Yeah.
And if I wanted to ask questions like how this would be reflected in report cards or how it's communicated to staff, would I find that out later or can I ask those now?
You can ask them the questions now, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Wisconsin state standards,
Yep.
right? So developed by the DPI and then you're adopting their recommendations basically. And then how does that affect report cards?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Like typically school, like our state standard, like our state has a report card, but that's based on the forward exam. which we have a specific school goal and a district goal for forward, like our growth on the forward assessment and the growth on MAP assessment. So you'll be able to see our achievement from a growth and attainment perspective. But from a standards, what you will see soon in several different grade levels, Craig, he's the data specialist working with Otis to get our standards, the ones that Ted was just talking about, the key standards that we've identified, that these are the things that,
Specific.
yep, which follow they're not just random ones, they're out of the standards here, but they provide, any state's gonna provide a huge list of standards. Our job is to identify the ones that are the must-knows, like those foundational skills. And then those are what we're gonna be on. You'll see that eventually on a report card. So how students are doing on the standard related to math, math facts or math fact fluency.
Okay.
You'll see on reading comprehension, you'll see specific standards and how the students are doing, like in progress or they're meeting that standard. Because we're moving our teaching practices so they align to those standards.
And this is why you have those two different tools for testing, because kids' results will be different on like a Wisconsin standard, like a forward exam. But then you want to see, like, some kids might do good on that test, but then fail one of ours. And then you're
Yeah.
seeing like the delta.
Yes.
I'm explaining
Likely
it
it's the
very
other way.
Okay.
Typically, it's usually the other way where they don't do as well in forward because it's usually it's a grade level test and it's sometimes a little bit more challenging. Whereas the test that I'm not saying it's watered down in the classroom, but it's based on the material that was just recently covered.
Right.
So you'll be able to see. The goal is that if those data are tracking the right way, we'll also see improvement in forward. But one is more on a growth where we would have a decaying average. So they may have started out the year low and over time their average is increasing. So it's dropping those low scores in that standard and it's accepting the new scores in that standard. That's going to tell us this group of students is really strong in this standard. This students may need more time, or these group need enrichment. Or when we do, looking at our strategic plan, when we look at those data at a global level, we will say, actually, we don't have the curriculum to address this. So there's no wonder the students are all failing this area because we have a gap.
Right, but then you're able to see the gap,
Yes.
which is the whole point,
Yep.
right? Okay, and then, just out of curiosity, how do all the educators learn these new standards?
So in the past, it was really up just the teachers like the principal, just to update the teachers on what the standards were. With Patty's new role, so she's got department heads, she will be working specifically with each department to talk about where they are in the standards development for our school. So she will be meet with them every single month to go through this, and then social studies will be the heavy lift, just like I said, because they've got new standards, and we haven't had an updated curriculum in decades, so they'll be addressing that. But they're going to get it through the department heads working with every single teacher at all the grade levels.
Right.
Yeah. So it'll be kind of a cascading message. She'll drive the conversation with department head, which are teacher leaders, and those teacher leaders will work with the teams.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
I move to adopt the required annual notice of student academic standards as identified in the Wisconsin model.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so this is another annual report we need to have approved by the board. This is reflective of our past school year. So it tells us the number of hours that are required for our kindergarten, 1st through 6th, and 7th through 12. You can see that we meet for because we at the 1,144 in this hours of instruction, the lowest quadrant here, that's the mouse. Down here, we've meet for all of them. We had 168 eligible days of instruction last year. We did have 4 weather days. So that creates the delta, but the subtotal is the 172, where we would have had 172, but we had 168, which still gives us that 1144. And this is just an annual report you get to approve. You have to approve every single year. We submit it to DPI once it's approved here.
I move to approve the 2022-2023 school calendar report as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
All right, another annual report that we bring to the board every July is the pupil transportation report. So this is for the year that just finished. So essentially, we can count any student who's ridden the bus as long as they've ridden the bus at least once in the whole school year. So you can see I've showed the last 4 years of data. In the 1920 school year, that was the year where the pandemic happened. That was kind of a normal year, and it was in line with the years prior. And then you can see the following year in 2020, 2021, we took a big dip where only 51% of our students rode the bus at any point in the school year. And then last year, we kind of jumped almost back up to normal. And then this year, we kind of returned to the pre-pandemic bus ridership numbers. So this report is then used to calculate our transportation aid from the state. We're estimated to get $23,000 of transportation aid, which sounds like a lot, but it's really only 4.6% of our total expenses on transportation. But obviously, it's still something. So yeah, this is just another annual report for us. Any questions on it?
Is transportation not something that's included with the joint finance committee, like all those budget discussions? Or?
Transportation aid is a topic every year on the state budget, or can be. I think as the state requires districts to transport anybody 2 miles or more from school, or if there's a hazardous crossing, which we're at the intersection of 2 highways. So we essentially have to transport all of our students who want to take transportation. It's come up in conversation, but I think it is such a large expense. If you increase the rate or total dollar amount, you'd have to do it by, or even a little movement in the rate would be a large amount for the whole state because almost every district transports students. But
I move to approve the 2022-2023 pupil transportation report as presented.
Good.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
all right, now for the fund conversation of the night. Fund 46 transfer first. So at the fiscal year end,
Nope.
all revenue and expense transactions are booked to the proper fiscal year. So we're still, even though we're in July, we're in a new fiscal year. If we get an invoice now that's from June or from last school year, we have to pay it out of last year's budget. So, or if we had services provided even on June 30th, and we get the invoice in July, we have to book it back to the previous fiscal year. So that's kind of what I've been doing these last few weeks as I prepared for this meeting and trying to get the final budget amounts and determine what we can transfer. On the whole, right now, Salem is projected to end the 2022-2023 fiscal year with a positive balance across most of our funds. The exception is Fund 21, which is projected to end with a $352 deficit. But we do have a significant fund balance in Fund 21, so it's just eating a little bit of that fund balance away. So one of the last major decisions that we have to do is decide what to do with our Fund 10 positive balance. Fortunately, we do have a positive balance. The inverse would be if we had a negative balance, there wouldn't really be a decision. It would just eat away at our fund balance. So we can either roll the full positive balance into our fund balance. We can transfer all of it to Fund 46, or we can do a combination of both. And then we have to make that decision by July 30th in order to book that back to the previous fiscal year. So on the next slide, I'll present a couple different options that we have, and then kind of leave it up for the board to decide at the end. So if we go to the next slide.
Yep, oh, I did it.
So this is the format that we have to present the budget amendments in. So I've kind of color coordinated by different scenarios. The first column shows our audited financial numbers for last school year. And then you can see in yellow, I tried to highlight our fund balance percentage, which is typically expressed at. So last year we finished with a fund balance of 19.78. Our school board policy requires 15%, so we're above that. So we're not violating our policy. Standard, most districts are hovering somewhere in the 20% range. The thing about fund balance is everybody thinks about it as like this large war chest of money that we have, but really it's just at a point in time. The reality is we have low points in cash. We're actually getting very close to a low point right now until we get our property taxes, our final property tax payments in August. And then our next low point will be right around Thanksgiving all the way through the winter break until we get the property taxes in January. So last year we finished with 19.78% fund balance.
State funding.
What was that?
Where does state funding?
Oh, state funding. So we do get a state aid payment in December. That's what kind of bumps us up for a little bit, and then it goes out the door, and then
Okay.
around January 20th is when we
Because we
receive.
always talk about that.
Yep. Based on the budget that was previously approved at the last board meeting, that's that white column, so the second column of numbers. Right now, we'd be projecting, or I guess at that point in time, we were projecting a 22.85% fund balance. But then as I presented the monthly revenue and expense reports, you saw our revenue came in slightly higher and our expenses came in slightly lower. So scenario one kind of just updates the budget to actuals, so it gets all the budget amounts to what it actually ended at, and leaves, we had increased our Fund 46 transfer amount to $200,000 at the last board meeting. So if we leave our Fund 46 transfer at $200,000, our fund balance would increase from 3.2 million up to 3.7 million, and then move to 25%. I did outline two other scenarios. So scenario two would be to increase that Fund 46 transfer by another $200,000. So now we'd be transferring $400,000 to Fund 46. And then that fund balance would grow from 3.2 to 3.5. So it's still growing by 300,000. And then our percentage gets to that 23.47%. And then scenario three is kind of even increasing it another $200,000, making a $600,000 transfer to Fund 46. And you can see our fund balance still increases, but only by a little over $100,000, and the percentage stays at that 21.84%. I think we're in a position where we could choose any of these options. If I had to make a recommendation, I think I would recommend scenario two. It's kind of the midpoint. We're increasing that amount for our long-term capital improvement plan, Fund 46, while also increasing the fund balance to a percentage which I believe we can would allow us not to have to short-term borrow, which would save us interest costs and also provide us with a little extra cushion depending what happens in the future, anything unexpected. So that would be my recommendation on.
Does that fund balance percentage help with the ratings, the bond ratings that we get?
It also helps
Is there like
when,
a threshold where it's like, if it's over 20%, it's the same as 22 or 25?
yeah, so fund balance does come into consideration when we issue debt. Anytime we were to issue debt, the bond rating agencies come in, they kind of look at our financials. The things that they're looking for are, one, are you following your board policy? So we are in all of these scenarios, we're over the 15%. But then the other thing is, yeah, I mean, the higher the percentage, the like safer or more secure you are to pay back your future debts. Sort of like having, a higher credit score, or I guess that's what the rating is, essentially is like a credit score, but the more fund balance you have, it helps you out. It definitely doesn't hurt you.
Would it bump us to the next level?
I don't think it would be enough to bump us to the next level. The other,
Any of those scenarios?
I don't think it would, but it just,
Obviously, it's up to them.
yeah. As long as we're meeting our policy, that's the big thing. But then it does show a little bit more worthiness of the rating, the more you have.
So two questions. First of all, is Fund 46, is there any positive interest that we gain in it? Is it one of the accounts that we get?
Yep, it's one of our investments accounts that's at the WISC.
Okay.
And right now we're earning over 5% on it.
Great.
Yeah.
But secondly, my second question is, considering all the building that's going on in the unforeseeables that we might see, it might be nicer to have a bit of a fund balance just in case, considering there might be unforeseeable situations that pop up.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that's why scenario 2 or 3 are probably the help on that situation. The other flip side though is even if we roll this into Fund 10, we can always use Fund 10 to cover. Fund 10 allows more flexibility. You can use it for building stuff or not, whereas Fund 46 has to be considered a capital project. Yeah.
And when can you pull out of Fund 46?
We can pull out at any time because we've had it for more than 5 years.
So in that particular, I see what you're saying, by that would make more sense than two. Okay.
And now we're going deeper into the weeds. If you transfer to Fund 46, it's part of your shared cost. So it's a reimbursable expense from the state. So it's considered an expense in that fiscal year. If you roll into fund balance, you do not get state aid on that because there was no expense. It just rolled into your fund balance.
But the minus side, if we took option 3, we're very limited on what we could use the money for.
Correct. Yeah. So 2 kind of like still gives us a little flexibility while increasing the fund balance, but also increasing the
And you think 2
long-term
would
care.
also help mitigate the short-term
Yeah,
borrowing
I
that you
mean-
have to do?
Yeah, I mean, 1, obviously, I think I'm like virtually certain we wouldn't have to short-term borrow. 2, I'm still pretty sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring to this meeting the resolution to allow us to short-term borrow for the year, just as a safety precaution in the event that, you know, something happened or whatever. I wanna make sure we have that ability to, but I don't foresee that we would have to in scenario 1 or 2. If we did scenario 3 though, it'd still be very tight.
I remember being on the board during the financial drought where we were fighting for 14%. This is amazing.
Yeah, we've been in a very good financial position for the last few years. ESSER did help out. I mean, it was a big influx of cash, but we're trying to also set ourselves up for the future. Luckily, the state budget came in slightly favorably for us. And then, you know, each year, you know, bring this forward and you can see where we line up.
And the referendum certainly helped out quite a bit too.
Yeah, I mean,
I think option 2 personally is kind of what I'm leaning towards, just because it's the best of both worlds. Now, one question though, Vicki, as far as non-building expenditures that could pop up throughout the school year, how do you feel currently with where that's laying as far as non-building costs that might pop up?
Well, this is what we've talked about. Like, we were just talking about that today. Like, in the short term, we're fine, but long term,
You don't know what's coming up. Okay.
and I would say we're certain we're going to have to go for an operational. So having, like, this is good. It's just not gonna, unless a miracle happens at the state level, but getting those conversations, being in front of them sooner rather than later would be important.
you know, and just to look at the bottom line, you know, we're spending, you know, approximately $15 million a year. So fund balance of 3.5 is not even a quarter of your year's worth of expenses, you know, so it's, some things that pop into mind that like could be unexpected costs would be if we had a couple students with private school placements elsewhere, you know, that can run $50,000 to $60,000, $70,000 when you throw in transportation per student. You have a couple of those. I mean, that's $200,000 if you have 3 of those instances. I mean, those are just things that pop up in my head. And obviously, Christy and I are always talking about potentials.
Well, and that's where we're looking at our staffing plan even, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes, just this like really trying to right size, I don't want to say downsize, but right size in all the areas so that we're able to have the programs for kids and put the money in front of the students where it needs to be. But there were places at the district level for admin we could cut, and that's what we did, and we'll talk about that tonight, but trying to find a way that we're sustaining the money that we have and be good stewards of the taxpayers, so.
Well, and I think I'm playing the new card here, but I did talk to Marquez earlier in the summer because there's a set of like questions you should ask as a treasurer from WASB, and one of them was knowing what the income looks like without referendums. And I think having that transparency to see like the cost versus what the actual income is based on.
That's pretty scary.
Right.
Yeah.
But then
That's a good-
helps make more practical decisions in the event, you know,
Yeah.
that something like that would happen. And then the community's aware and we all kind of strive for the same.
Yeah, so our operating referendum is 1.5 million. So imagine right now we ended with a positive balance of, 500,000. So we would have had a negative balance of $1 million right there. Obviously, in that situation, if we had failed, we probably would have had to cut costs to get back to a balanced budget.
And cost is not, chairs and.
It's not easy to find.
Yes.
Yeah, it's people.
People, right.
Yep.
I mean, is there any significant difference between between 1 and 2 in terms of potential mill rate, tax rates, on our community?
No, the mill rate wouldn't be affected. What would be, I guess it would be slightly impacted. In scenario one, the mill rate might lower 1 cent, 2 cents, but there's other variables out there, property valuations that are a bigger determinant of that.
That's obviously a question that many people in our community would ask.
Yep.
It's unforeseeable though, like that would be hard to calculate considering what our costs end up being, because if we end up as total balanced, or would say we even go under, it could be the opposite effect, you know what I mean? So, well, not necessarily, it wouldn't be the opposite effect.
So I guess when I presented the preliminary budget last month, I'm still projecting a slight decrease in the mill rate. And this wouldn't change that decrease in my eyes. The other thing is when we passed our operating referendum, in the previous 3-year cycle, we actually had it increasing each year because obviously inflation causes things to go up in price. When we did our operating referendum that started this past year, now we're starting in year 2, we kept it a flat amount because we're also passing the building referendum, and with all the information going on, we didn't want to make it any more complicated than it already was. So this scenario where we end up with a positive balance, I know we've kind of ended up that way the last couple of years. I do foresee that tightening in the next couple of years because obviously everything is going to go up in price. So I don't foresee us having. I mean, we'll have the same discussion next year, but it's not going to be this large of an amount. It's definitely going to shrink. So.
Anybody else favor 1, 2, 3, or?
I like 2.
I like to.
Oh, do we need to?
We're gonna go into the budget amendments because that was all dependent on what we did for Fund 46 because it's a significant amount.
I see.
And then the final one, you can
Okay.
approve it as presented. So with our Fund 46 transfer decided, then in accordance with our Wisconsin state statutes, I would like to propose our final budget amendments to kind of bring everything in line with actual revenues and expenses. This also came up as an audit finding last year because I forgot to do a budget amendment after we decided the Fund 46 transfer. And because it was such a large amount, the auditors deemed it as a material difference between what was budgeted and what we actually did. So by now approving a budget amendment, even though we're in the new fiscal year, that finding will drop off. So I think we'll be down to those 2 that I've been trying to
never
get down to.
fix.
Yeah, never. Yep. So significant revenue changes. There was just 2 changes I'd mentioned to Fund 10. We received additional state aid through our school mental health program. And then we also did receive larger federal revenue from our Medicaid administrative claiming and cost settlement. So those are related to our school-based services that we provide. Those came in higher than, I was conservative on the estimate and they came in much higher than I thought. So now next year I know I can at least count on this much. On the expense side, the Fund 46 transfer, which we discussed on the previous slide with scenario 2, that is going to be an additional expense then in Fund 10, which we would receive state aid on. And then, like I had mentioned, our Fund 27 transfer was lower than expected because we did get more high-cost special education aid than I had originally anticipated. So then we didn't have to transfer as much from Fund 10 to 27. And the other funds, there wasn't anything material, more than a few $1,000s here or there. On the board packet, I did present the 3 different scenarios in full throughout all the funds. The only other thing I wanted to mention was Fund 50. We were projecting to end with a significant positive balance. And it was, I think at the last meeting, I thought it was going to be at least $100,000. I was still trying to be conservative until everything came in. So now we're looking at a $172,000 positive balance that's going to go into our Fund 50. That was one of the reasons why we didn't raise meal prices for this upcoming school year because we have such a large fund balance. DPI has said that's one way you can draw down that fund balance. And then obviously in the following years, we'd likely have to increase our meal prices. The other thing that we can do, as long as DPI approves it, is as part of the referendum, we're redoing the South cafeteria. And so some of the equipment that's being bought, that was originally going to be bought with referendum dollars, we can pay for out of Fund 50 fund balance, and then that frees up more money on the referendum project for furniture or other things that aren't related to food service. So,
In this motion, do you need us to say Fund 46 transfer of 400,000?
if you
This
could,
one? They need to say this.
yeah.
We just say as discussed during Or do we want to be specific?
Mention scenario 2.
Scenario 2, if you, yeah, I always go back.
Scenario 2.
Can I have a motion, please?
I move to approve Fund 46 transfer scenario 2 and 2022-2023 budget amendments as presented.
So moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Oh, yeah.
Motion carries. It's exciting.
Now we got to read all these policies.
And good news, we don't have to, so this second reading, I'm going to the very end. Oh, there we go.
I move to approve the second reading of the policies as presented and discussed.
So moved and second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Is this because we realized we don't have to do this?
It's a shame out tonight.
All right, thanks, Shayna.
We're just trusting that everybody took the opportunity to listen to first reading, do their homework,
Well, yeah.
prepare. It was all in your board packet, so.
And the one that we had the extensive conversation about, we're gonna bring it back up into cycle, the social media one in August. Shayna needed more time, Nicole needed more time. We just need more time to give you the pros and cons.
And are
to
they
it.
all posted on the website too?
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
anyone with questions can look at it there.
Yes. And then just for full disclosure, like a second reading, this does legitimately count as second reading in Wisconsin. We don't actually have to have, it was just in our policy, which we are going to be updating. Okay. All right, information items. I'm very excited to provide some strategic plan updates. We've got a handful of people that are going to, Nicole, Christy. Patty can't be here to provide some of these updates. So Christy will chime in, and so will I, and so will Marquez. We wanted to provide you updates from since the 21st, March 21st, when you approved the strategic plan. I think it's critical for the community, but I would say teachers especially, they often feel they get cynical if they feel like we have a strategic plan and we don't do anything with it, and they just feel like it's gonna collect dust on a shelf. I plan to share this during our back to school in-service with our teachers. During one of the rotations, it's gonna be a great time, but I want them to see the work that we've been doing and the work we have planned this year, so that helps build momentum, that helps keep them energized to continue the work when it starts to feel like a slog in February and March. So, and I think the community deserves to hear where we are. So you'll see since the 21st, and then we decided to have the first year of implementation be a little extra long, meaning we'd start March and we'd go through the end of this, end of June, and then we'd be in year 2 next year. So that's how you'll see it presented. So I'm going to allow Christy to fill in for Patty, who's home for personal reasons, but she's going to share our updates for our Student Growth Area 1.
Sure. So for student growth and achievement, one of our main things that we really focused on this year was the increase in electives. If you remember way back when we started the strategic planning, that was one of the hot spots in the survey for both students and staff, is that they wanted more options. So we worked really hard. We're offering the robotics or STEM elective to 6th through 8th graders as one of their choices this year. And we sent a survey out to all middle school students so that they could choose and kind of rank order their electives, so that we could get creative with our scheduling and give students more options in their elective choices. The activity bus, Ryan worked on that last year to increase student participation in our after-school activities. And then we started training last year on, they're called Kagan strategies, but really what they are is engagement strategies for students. So how do we teach uniquely or differently so that it's not lecture and we're engaging the students more in their learning. For goal 2, that is the learning and working environment. We did a lot of work with job descriptions this year. We consolidated some administrative roles and support staff roles and teaching roles so that we could better meet the needs of our building. We hired an assistant director of innovation and educational technology. We're really focusing on community engagement, and I know Nicole Paul is going to talk a little bit about that, our civic responsibility. Nicole's going to talk about that as well. We also updated our logos and district branding, and we expanded our continuum of care so that we can be more flexible and support more students. This year is really starting more in our special ed area, so expanding our special ed services and our special ed continuum of care. But kind of included in that too is we're hiring another school psychologist who's joining us this school year too to help support student needs.
I have a question about the previous slide. We can go back to that. You said after-school activities in study hall. Are you talking about a study hall after school?
Yes.
Okay.
That is an after-school study hall.
Thank you.
And you'll see ceramics there, that is being explored, no, that's okay. That's being explored as an art option as well. So we've started engaging in it and how we can start. We've got the supplies, how can we use it, so. All right, civic responsibility. So I'm just gonna go ahead. So the task force, it was CAC, and then a few board meetings back, we switched the work that the CAC was doing. So Nicole can continue to help lead that work, and it's now a task force because it's a big portion of our strategic plan. And so she's gonna provide some updates.
Sure. So we, a group of parents, and then Salem teachers, admin, Nicole, Paul, we all have been meeting since January to talk about civic responsibility and community service and how to basically instill that knowledge and those habits with our students. And so essentially we came up with a ton of ideas. We had a guest speaker from the Sharing Center who really helped a lot at one meeting. And so really this week, we're kind of finalizing how to take all the ideas and implement them. So we have 5 buckets that we came up with for civic responsibility. One is fundraising. An example of that, so we'll kind of make a project plan so we can keep track of the projects in each bucket and implement them, and it's just something we can work off of. But fundraising is the first bucket, so these are just as examples, but project 1 might be doing a fundraising for the Sharing Center. So in fall of 2023, we would work to define, implement that, and then review it to figure out what worked, what didn't, and then we can basically just repurpose it. And then later this year, potentially doing a holiday drive. And the goal would be that we have a roadmap for at least 3 years. But that also these things can be easily repurposed. The second bucket was external service events. So this would be providing opportunities for students to leave the school and go somewhere, whether it is on a weekend, to some sort of, Habitat for Humanity, or there's a service that builds beds. What's it called? We talked about it. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So things where we can schedule it and organize it and get the students out. Not necessarily as a field trip, but something they could do on their own, but also things as a field trip. So we can take them to the senior centers and they can read with the seniors, things like that. Internal service events would be things that we do inside of the school. So example would be giving the seniors a field trip to the school, and they can come into an early elementary class and the students can read to them, or they can do holiday art, things like that. And then classroom service. So this was important because we want to make sure that every student is able to contribute to service. So some students might not have transportation to actually go somewhere, right? Or they can't make an event. Classroom service would be something that they're able to do in the classroom. So assigning pen pals with the senior centers, or the Sharing Center, for example, they had a really good idea of decorating their grocery bags, like for holidays and things like that. So things that the kids can do in the class. So these are things that we can hopefully put into action this year. That's the plan. And then 5 would probably not be this year, but it would be including service in the curriculum. So coming up with every semester, students are required to do X amount of hours of service, and that they all will be able to do, right? And then at the end of the year, incorporating that into an award ceremony. So you could kind of have tiers of, baseline tiers of how many hours and what they're doing. So it's really exciting. It's a lot of work, a lot of really good discussions, and I feel like the group everyone has such different experiences and great ideas. I just feel like everyone really collaborated well. together.
And I think you're working to get kids to participate and join.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so
I mean, outside of just these events, but be on the actual
on the committee.
task force.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
So we
cool.
want students, right, to be a part of this task force to help put these things together, so.
I'm not sure who this falls on. There's a really great website. I don't know what the age limits are. It's called interview.org, like INNERVIEW. It allows students to create their service portfolio. So we use it. We used to keep track of all these paper hours and stuff like that. So students go on, they write their own description, they tie it to one of the UN Global Goals, they post a picture, they reflect on it. It follows them. It's also a great way for kids to find service opportunities.
Post our own, so-
We can post our own, so like if this group is looking for parent volunteers or other high school student volunteers, it would show up on there.
And that's Interview.
Interview, it's free.
Well, because this can be a tie-in to something like a high school.
I wish John would jump on
Our
board.
Zello program, so what we use for the academic and career planning can also track that, and that does follow them
Yeah.
already into the high school too. So all of that could be part of their portfolio.
What is that called?
Zello, it's
Zello.
XELLO, yeah, Zello, and it's about academic and career planning, but they do have a service component built in.
And we use that here already?
We use Zello already, yeah.
Okay.
But does this go down to lower grades?
I don't know, I'm not sure. I know we use it in the high school.
Really, Zello is more for middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look at it.
And just one other like super minute thing, Nicole, that this is just, when I look at service hours, we made a big shift. When we moved to standards-based grading, we got rid of hours because it seemed transactional like points are. And we just call them service experiences. So like,
I like it.
you have to accumulate enough experiences that you've done.
I love it.
Because it's otherwise hours are like, hey, I got my 20 hours, now can I get Chipotle? Like it would seem like very
Right.
like monetary
Well, maybe
versus.
when we get to the point of defining that, because that would be for next year.
Yeah.
Maybe it could be.
It's just one of those,
It could be a good, we did this, I know it works,
absolutely.
input, right?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Chipotle.
You can't trade service hours for Chipotle, sorry. Only Aunt
right.
Becky can get her kids into USC with us.
Another big component to this work is the community engagement. And this ties into a variety of things that Nicole's going to talk about, but it goes back to the conversation we just had about the referendum. I think it's important to have our community engaged as many times as they possibly can, because I want that, like, this is our community school. I want them to feel invested in the work we're doing. So all of these things, we're tapping into previous voters. They may not have kids anymore, but my intention is to make sure they know that they are a part of this heart and soul of this school. Because when it comes to making decisions about programs they had when they were kids, we don't have those right now because we had to get rid of them at some point. And I don't want to lose any more programs that they loved. So that's why Nicole's role in this district is so important and critical.
Transitioning from that, our first event that we were able to hold this year, which was awesome. These people came back. There were over 60 former staff and students that came back with their guests. And we met and we talked about their memories, and we took them on a tour around the school so they could see everything before it changed. And it was just really interesting to hear what they had to say about how it used to be and how it is now and what's to come. So we were able to do the alumni event. We also were able to bring the community in for the Realtor Breakfast event. It was our first one, and we will absolutely be doing it again. We were able to bring in over 55 realtors, and they enjoyed breakfast while the admin team told them all about our strategic plan and talked about our community and how they could be involved within our school and be a part of the things that are happening here that are really exciting. And they all left really excited, and we had really great feedback about it too. Something exciting that's coming very soon. It's ready, but we will be training the teachers on it when they come back in August, is the implementation of rooms. This is how we are going to be able to streamline the communication, which was one of the biggest things that we talked about during our strategic planning is, there's not going to be a class dojo and 5 different apps that you have to use for your 5 different children to communicate with their teachers and the staff at the school. So this is where Rooms was born, and you can kind of see in the bottom corner where the photos are. That's what it'll look like. So it's a part of the app that we already currently have with our website I will be sharing the link to download again if you don't have it. But it'll already be right in the app. They will just log on there. They'll be able to quickly, there's a drop-down menu if you have multiple children here, so you don't even have to switch back and forth between accounts. There's a drop-down menu, you'll choose your child, and you'll be able to communicate with all of their teachers right there. It's gonna be really amazing. And it'll be really nice for the teachers too, to have one place that they can communicate and keep it kind of all very streamlined. So it's really exciting. Plus it'll be right in the app, so you can just go to the app. The app will have all the dining, any announcements, any events, so it's like a one-stop shop. So I'm really excited about that. We're also launching ML Schedules. So if you didn't know, I do the facilities scheduling for Salem, and we needed a better platform. So Dan and I spent a lot of time this past year looking into platforms, and we found ML Schedules, and it's really seamless, really easy. Anybody who wants to request any sort of facilities use here at Salem, teachers, staff, community, it'll make it really easy for them to log on. They create a username, they have one username, and they'll be able to really easily request what they need for space, because we do want to welcome people in to use our building. We encourage that. So that's launching. It's actually already launched. We just need to teach people how to use it. So it's coming soon. And another thing that we have on the horizon, which I'm excited about, is our Meet the Principals events, kind of like we did with Vicki last year, Meet the Superintendent. We're now doing that with our new structure of principal team. So Ben, Allie, and Ryan will have 2 events, one morning and one evening in August, where we're inviting the community in and students and staff and families to come and meet them and ask questions and just kind of mingle and get to know them and be aware of what our new structure is. So I'm excited for a lot more exciting things.
Question about ML schedules.
Sure.
Once something is approved, and I assume it has to go through Vicki to be approved, is that available on the school's webpage as part of the schedule?
Yes, it will be on the webpage. There will be a button. So right now on the main banner, there's a facilities use button. So I have a page that's ready to go. It's just not live yet. So when you click on that button, it will then tell you how to register as a user. And then anytime that they want to schedule a room, they just have to click a button and it'll log in.
I'm talking about information to the community, saying what's happening in the school.
Does it go like on our
Like
calendar?
events?
So you're saying
Yes.
like Boy Scout
Yeah.
meeting or
Yes,
whatever?
it's all going to stream. It's actually linked right into the calendar. So anything that goes on there that's a public event, we have a special events calendar, and Jennifer can kind of speak to that as well. We have a special events calendar that any kind of public meeting or event, like the Realtor Breakfast, the alumni event, when we do the Veterans Day Assembly, that will all automatically be listed within the calendar that shows on the website.
Because we're talking about support with the community and getting information out so people can see what's happening here.
Yes.
I think that would be a great asset to anyone who wants to see what's happening in the building.
Yep, it's all already linked. Once we put the page live, then it will all come together.
right,
You'll
thank
be
you.
able to see it if you scroll down on the bottom of the page. There's that events bar, which is the calendar, and you can see anything that's linked to that right on there. So,
Okay.
yep, it'll be right
So if I
there.
requested the gym, that would show up on.
That would not show up.
Oh, okay.
No, unless we wanted it to. So if you were doing, let's say like the Jaden Zachary basketball camp was here this summer, if he wanted that to be public, which he did, then I could make that so that it is public and shows
But
up
it
on the
wouldn't
page.
just seamlessly do it.
Yeah.
You'd have to say, you can make this public.
Is there a button that you could make it public?
Yes.
So like if she's scheduled for her, the civic responsibility, what do they call it, the task group?
Yeah.
So let's say the date changes and you wanted to
Yes.
update it.
Yep, we
And-
can make sure that that's on our special events calendar so that it shows up automatically.
That would answer
Do I
Chris's question
contact
then.
you, or do you say like public, private on the ML?
Yep, when you're in there, you can request that to be shown on the
Oh,
calendar.
awesome. That's great.
That's perfect.
all
And,
really
and
easy.
great for you.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I'll write
Lots
this
of
down.
exciting things coming.
We're always looking for a good facilities.
Yeah, do it.
To ours, we've gone through 3 in the last
I'm
3 years.
really, really excited about it.
Yeah.
We shall need the test run. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'll let
We're
you work
kind
out
of
the
testing
kinks.
it out this week, and we put in some of the PTO events and things like that, just to make sure that everything's
That's
working.
great.
Yeah,
That's
so-
really exciting.
That's awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Goal 3 is stewardship of resources. I'll go through pretty quickly because I know everybody's pretty warm in this room. So going back to kind of this last topic that Nicole was just talking about, we did create a facilities and usage fee schedule that went into effect as of July 1. So we actually approved that back in January and then started with the effective date of July 1. Kind of going back to another previous topic, maintaining an adequate fund balance. So as I mentioned, we've maintained a fund balance over 15% in order to be in line with our policy, and we are trying to get to a point where we don't have to short-term borrow. So that's one of our goals, and we're accomplishing that goal, and we hope to maintain that and get to that point. And then regularly communicating with stakeholders about district finances. I did hold a School Finance 101 presentation back in the spring, and I would like to do that at least annually or maybe even twice a year, with the potential to increase the topic and information to maybe a Finance 102 for anybody who's interested in learning more about how the school budgets work and how school finance works in general.
All right, so this is us continuing year one. So this is the long year one, but goal area one. Thank you, Christy, for taking Patty's.
Yes, so I'm going to read Patty's notes, but to kind of start, we are going to have a couple of speakers on our opening days. So that's kind of where that Andrew McPeak comes in. You'll kind of see this name throughout as somebody coming in to do professional development with our staff on our opening days. Vicki talked earlier about doing the common formative assessments, so that's going to help us align our standards and what we're measuring in each grade level. The science of reading, so this is going to be differentiated professional development based on grade level. So they will also get job embedded coaching, meaning it's not just kind of a sit and get and then you're done. They'll come back and do coaching with teachers throughout. Patty's note said that the 4K is going to really start focusing on like language and comprehension pieces, just as one example of how it's going to be differentiated. And then in middle school, they're going to start working on doing writing across all subjects. So those are some pieces that she had within her notes. We adjusted our master schedule, as I talked about, to include more intervention time and enrichment opportunities. I shouldn't say more intervention time. I should say smartly scheduled intervention time, so that our interventionists, which we have 1 reading, 1.5 reading, 1 math, so that they're able to kind of branch throughout our building and kind of target more students at each grade level when those students need intervention. And that kind of leads into REACH. So you'll hear about REACH being built into the schedule for next year. REACH is reinforce, extend, achieve, challenge, help. So this was formerly Falcon time, or some schools call it RTI time, but really it's a structured time within the schedule to be able to work with students at different levels and abilities.
Before she jumps in, so that student accountability piece, this is really going to tie in that Andrew McPeak, the opening day work. So there's going to be a large community event. I've got a couple other districts that are going to partner with us for families to hear about Gen Z Unfiltered. Andrew McPeak is a co-writer of that book. It's a great book, and there'll be options for people to collect some of those resources. But he really talks about, and this is kind of one of our themes, is going to look at not only just that psychological safety for students, but that accountability, and really increasing the accountability that we hold for students, and maintaining, like, love is limits, like establishing limits for kids so they understand that there are opportunities for them to grow and learn, and mistakes help you do that, and also holding them accountable to the learning that they're expected to do. So he's going to present to the community, so it's going to be more of a family event and speaking about some of the ways that we can best meet the needs of Gen Z students as well as the Gen Alpha group coming up. And then that same morning for the staff, he's going to do an opener for Gen Alpha, which is like 2016 through present, kids that were born, understanding that they're different and they learn differently than they did before because they have so much access to information. So how can we use that access responsibly? And then for middle school, it's really going to be targeted on that student agency, and in order to build that agency and self-advocacy, it really is limits and establishing boundaries, and how can we do this in an engaging way that honors the student but still says, you didn't do this, so you don't just automatically get this. You have to earn. There are things you have to earn. You can't just automatically be given everything. So that's going to be a theme throughout this year so that we can hold kids accountable. The civic responsibility comes back, where I love that it's not calculating hours. It's like, we're addressing the heart of students and that humanity, because everything is so quick. You can get stuff done very quickly and it's instant gratification. But this idea that you have to work for it, it's going to be part of their shirts. We're going to have to work hard to earn things. You don't just not everyone gets a trophy, and it's okay that not everyone gets a trophy. Because we love you enough that you're going to have to try again next time. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to encourage you to invite all of your people to that speaker. All right, goal area.
Quick
Yeah.
question on the master schedule.
Yeah.
Have there been any talks now that Central has changed their format to go to trimesters with the middle school here?
So we didn't want to make any of those sweepy. I talked to John about it. That change, I know he's doing the trimesters now, and their time extended day won't be till 24, 25, I believe.
Yeah.
I wanted to give us time to see how that would work out. Let them be the guinea pig. So, yeah.
So goal 2, again, learning and working environment. We're looking to add the National Junior Honor Society to increase our civic responsibility and student leadership, establishing a Builders Club, again, aligned with some of those civic responsibility pieces, increasing our staff and student celebrations. So last year we started with those positive referrals. The middle school team did the yard signs. So just really amping that up, continuing to push the celebrations forward, bigger and better. We have also talked about an awards banquet at the end of the year to recognize specific student achievements and accomplishments as well. We have a tool called Panorama, which is a student survey, and that does allow us to kind of gauge how our students are feeling about the school environment, how they feel within the school environment. So we will continue on with our work with Panorama. Qualtrics is something new that we've been discussing, but the purpose of Qualtrics is that it's a survey for staff and our families so that we can get feedback on their take on our environment and how they feel about our school environment, so that we're just getting more voice from our stakeholders to understand, is there something that we're missing? Do we need to look at specific things through those surveys? Our task group that is continuing to oversee the civic responsibility will continue. We're going to begin honing in on collecting data on who's participating in our clubs and activities. So we're not really tracking that as much, perhaps, as some of our athletic activities. So we just want to ensure that we have a really good baseline moving forward in both areas to see how many of our students are involved in extracurriculars. And then this year we are expanding our 3-year-old programming. So we're involving peer models to our 3-year-old programming, we're very excited about that. And we're going to continue to work on building forward for our young learners.
Thanks, Christine. The second portion, do you want me to, you can take her.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Jessica is also going to be kind of co-presenting, no, we're not co-presenting, she's going to be doing a session on the back to school in-service days. Again, our desire is to keep that train moving forward to address the best ways to interact with our staff and our students, understanding that perhaps there are better ways in some instances than worksheets, and really engaging mobility and active learning. We have a parent university. It's going to be up and running at some point this year, and that's going to be a lot of the work that Jennifer and Patty are doing, really helping our families understand the type of apps and programs that we have, really kind of being a little bit much like in your face and talking about it a lot, because the more people hear about the programs we have, it'll give us a better sense of whether they're being used or not, and whether they're useful or not. And then one of the book studies, so we have this speaker coming in, this presenter, Andrew, coming in, but there's leadership books that our staffer, if you're in a teacher leader position, there's a book and a study guide that we're going to be going through all of our teacher leaders to really carry the themes throughout that book. And so it permeates throughout the building.
All right, goal area 3. So some of the things we have coming up for the remainder of this first year, we've already talked about the implementation of the software, the ML schedules platform. Kind of repeating again, fund balance, trying to get to that higher fund balance so that we don't have to short-term borrow. I had estimated it about 22%. I think today we got to 23%-ish. So we should be very close to that goal. Hopefully we can check that one off at the end of year 1. The next one, kind of working to get to a consistent mill rate that allows us to maintain and improve our school while also being good stewards of taxpayer money. We kind of went back to, or discussed that at the last meeting with those peaks and valleys. You know, I want to try to avoid that so that we don't have surprise taxpayers, and that they can come to expect at some point here, hopefully in the near future, a very steady mill rate, and so they know how to budget appropriately for their personal finances. We did obtain some grant funding, thanks to some work by Patty, to offset the training expenses for Project Lead the Way. So thanks, Patty, if you're listening. And then student choice around electives, we are expanding further through Skyward so that families can select courses online. And this will allow us to identify staffing needs based on student interest. So.
Can we take a quick breath here? Is anybody else warm?
I think we all are.
As I thought, it was, you know, I'm an old guy. I got to watch this stuff.
Did you not know that we haven't had the air conditioning this entire time you've been in here?
How long is air conditioning going to be off in this? I don't mean tonight, but.
I don't know, but I would imagine.
It should be back online sooner than later. I mean, definitely before the next meeting, but it's pretty good.
What's a comfy chair if I pass out over this?
Yeah, we're almost done. Just
almost
hang
done.
in there.
Yep,
This is the last slide for this. Your next update on strategic plan will be in November.
I don't mean to throw a dart in all this real quick, so I've been listening really intently for the last couple, for a bunch of slides here. Now with the strategic plan, one of the things that I saw to be one of the biggest discrepancies from years prior to now is bridging the gap between the COVID situation with young learners, especially with the younger learners compared to do you believe, and I know the answer is probably yes, right? But do you believe some of these things that we're doing right now is continually focusing somewhat on bridging that gap between what we've had with the COVID learners to future learning, I guess you can say it. And I say this from especially our under 5, grade 5 and under. They were severely impacted, I believe, from the COVID situation and moving forward. I mean, I see it in my own kids all the time, and we try to ourselves to help out with that too. Do you believe the strategic plan, in its essence, too, is helping do that as well? That may be an ambiguous question right there, but
Like what kind of evidence are you looking for?
I'm seeing a lot of awesome, cool new things.
Yeah.
But I think there's some things that we still need to focus on too, that need to be addressed as well. And again, I know this is an update from the strategic plan point of view with specific parameters that are being presented tonight.
Academically making
Like
sure that
academically,
they're
just
at their
ultimately, the ultimate goal of a strategic plan is to help educate our kids better and more effectively.
All right, and if I can just jump in real quickly. Because of COVID, on a national basis, student achievement scores are down dramatically. I mean, it's not just one state, it's the entire, as well as ACT and SAT scores. So
I think all of that work starts with the standards that we just adopted. So when teachers take those standards.
Sure, I get a little nervous when I see a lot of new implementation. It doesn't necessarily mean bad.
No.
It just, because change sometimes, where there was still a problem, and that's not because of anything but environmental that was happening during the entire nation. So I want to make sure that there's still some focus on that, and it's great. The shiny new things are awesome, and I like them too. I think they're great, but I just want to make sure that there's still a continuing focus on that bridge building.
I think the bridge, Nick, like if I could jump in, is like taking those standards, right? Like that we heard about. And then if you look at that strategic plan about the idea of common formative assessment, right? So like those constant checks where kids are at.
Correct.
And then being able to tweak and provide supports and enrichment intervention for those kids to meet those standards. Like it's not like achieving those standards isn't an option, right? Like I think that's where we're addressing that learning loss, right?
And
Like
it's not just the Wisconsin standards, but our own standards.
our power standards.
And I guess
right?
it's not so much a question per se, more than I just want to make sure that I'm saying it out loud, making sure that this is indirectly. I believe you're correct, Ted, with what you're saying there, but I just wanted to say it out loud as it is in my mind, because I see those gaps often and every day still, right? So I just want to and to me, that's the near dear thing to me, especially after everything we've gone through. So I just wanted to say out loud, I love a lot of the things that are going on. I just want to make sure that plan is also addressing that in maybe not such specific words, I guess you could say.
No, and I think that's, and I would say, so new and flashy, I think, I don't know that outside of the electives, which aren't necessarily new, which are just coming back. I don't know anything is, so science of reading, that's not actually new. That's just been around a very long time. And I would say our teachers there's been a group that are like waiting to go back to the way you teach that foundational teaching. So maybe I should have, and I could next time provide you so I looked at all of our bell curve data. Like as far as our data go, like we have some pockets that are going really well.
Sure.
And I could point to standards that, okay, we're nailing this standard. I don't even know if we've got this stuff in place. So do I think we're getting there? Yes. Do I have our standards and our curriculum scope? Like, no, we haven't. We don't have that in this district. We're working on that. Sure. But I love that you're keeping it back to student achievement, because like I was working with our new principal, and initially he was just looking at a growth goal for kids using MAP and AimsWeb. And no, we also have to have an attainment goal. We have to have achievement. I need to know that students aren't just growing, but we're moving them towards achieving at grade level, because that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, being happy at school and doing some of the things you love increase that experience of
Sure.
wanting to do better, right?
Yeah.
So electives and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's great that we're trying to do that, because that's why I like school, is because of those things, and otherwise, and that's what made me good at the other things, because I actually like doing those things,
Yeah.
right? So that being said, I just, if I'm having thoughts about when we're going through this, and I've been very like intimate with this process to a degree, I can imagine there's other parents that would have the same kind of thoughts, like, hey, you guys are doing a lot of new things. What about the old thing that was a huge concern to us?
Yeah, and that's where I would say, like, so those Kagan strategies that we spent we spent time on last year, like active learning, where it's not just sit and get and retell out of on a worksheet. It's really important. If students are engaged in learning, the odds are they're not trying to set small fires under a desk, because they're engaged in that learning process. And so I would say we're going to get there because we've got the right people in place and we're doing the right work. You've got teachers who are excited to try those Kagan strategies.
And this was not a criticism.
No, I didn't think that. I didn't think that at all. Yeah.
Observation.
So I hope I don't sound I'm excited. I just didn't put a whole bunch of numbers, but I did look at all the numbers.
No, and I
a
don't
little
need
bit.
numbers to tell me how we're doing.
Yeah.
I just, sometimes, like this, again, the shiny new things get in the way of why we're doing those shiny new things, right? So.
And to Nick's point, I mean, I think that is like a key, like a
That's gotta go get
key
spare.
performance
Indicator, 100%.
that parents would want to know. And as someone that has no career or schooling in education, I think for people that watch the board meetings and they hear Wisconsin State Standards, AimsWeb, like that is like, what is that?
Yeah.
What does all that mean? And maybe to Nick's point, when you know how you're gonna, or maybe it's already up, but the strategic plan kind of progress moniker, maybe adding the academic achievement in kind of layman's terms, so
Yeah.
people can see the things we're doing, you're doing,
Yeah.
from an achievement standpoint or something, right?
Yeah, and I think to that degree, if we give them the ability to understand, like, for example, when we put the assessment information up, you put web links, if you're really that interested and you're really thoughtful to that degree, a little bit of study into what's being if you're going to ask the question, you could do yourself a little favor and do a little bit more digging into it, I guess. But as long as we can provide some of that, but I just thought I'm just sitting here trying to think as just a lay person,
I think it's totally
parent,
fair.
and my wife's a teacher, so I get to hear all the terms all the time. So like, I understand a lot of what's happening. I just kind of took myself down to this, your lay person parent, right? And that was what I kind of formulated through that, just to a degree. And again, great information. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
No, and I mean, if the board would like, next month, I would be happy to share like where our benchmarking data are, because that is informing the strategic plan for MAP, because all of those indicators I just met with Ben on to help him establish his goals. So he's going to meet with the building leadership team for discipline, for when it's related to student engagement, and then for our growth data, and so it's AimsWeb for our little friends, and I can talk about what that test is, the forward exam, because those are really, that's what realtors say when people go on to see Redfin.
It's a lay
I want to
person,
know
yeah.
what rating the school is getting. So, I mean, I'm all ready for that. I can do it.
We don't have to change anything that you're already doing, but just
Oh, no,
I guess
we're
through
already
the
doing
process,
it.
I know. Just keep it in mind when
Yeah.
you're.
Do you want me to share it next month?
Will there be future discussion about school security?
Yes, sir.
That was not discussed at all up there.
You're right, it wasn't on this one.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe the academic achievement could always be an agenda in a board meeting.
I just don't know how new
It
data
might
will be.
not- Right, it might not be
Okay,
right, but maybe something that we can
I could-
always
I'll-
kind of apply.
do you want me to have it on the agenda, like where we are?
I'd love to
Benja?
have
Some sort
data.
of focus on.
Love
a
it.
conversation. Yeah,
Done.
It'd be great. As long as the meeting, the other parts of the meeting aren't 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I could do where we were, how we used our data from last year. Yeah, I'm like sweating. I could use our data from last year, how we set our goals for this year, or we could wait till, and then I could do another one in September when we have our new, like our fall data.
Let's
Like, how
wait
would you
till
like me to do it?
September.
Even if it's.
Wait till September?
I feel
It
like
doesn't
you'd want to
always
see the
have to
growth.
be data. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just kind of a, did you know?
I'd be of not doing something just for the sake of doing it though either.
But I'm used to doing
Right.
that on a regular, like I'm used to doing it in a fall and
Full-
a
yeah,
spring.
yeah.
Like those tandems are natural for. I'm happy to do that if that's what the board.
As
would
long
like.
as it's meaningful, like, I'm not in the idea of making the agenda longer just to make it longer.
No, I didn't think so.
But just to make it, where there's some meaningful information, absolutely. Okay.
Do you want me to tell the fall to do an update?
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, because there's not a ton of info right now, considering it's.
It's everything we use, because we place students in interventions and enrichments based on spring data. So they'll start the year off either in an intervention or an accelerated class based upon, so I can share any of those. Or I can wait till the spring to give you the fall to give you new updated data, whatever
And maybe
pattern.
I mean, I don't want to add to people's plates, but maybe it's a dialogue like prior to the meeting.
I mean, whatever works. Your judgment.
Because I'd love to see that data comparing our local data with the state data and like where are the discrepancies, to your point.
Yeah, like where we're at and what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's literally that's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
That's what our retreat was.
Right.
So
Cool.
we looked at a lot of data. So I will find a time that makes sense for everybody, and then I'll put it on a cyclical pattern so that we always have that review. I love that. I do. Oh, my stars, we have another thing.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Speaking of cyclical patterns, I'll get in 90 seconds. Referendum project update. So last month we had the groundbreaking right at the end of school. I just wanted to provide an update, and then this will be on a cycle every 3 months until the end of the project. So obviously we passed the referendum back in April 2022. We partnered with PRA and Myron through this whole process. It was over a year worth of planning until the groundbreaking. Priority areas included making our facility safer, improving accessibility, adding STEM facilities, improving outdoor learning and play areas, and then updating outdated and unused spaces for optimal staff and student use. And we wanted to accomplish this while being safe, making sure the project's on time, finishing by August 2024, and making sure we're fiscally responsible. And we kind of locked that in with that guaranteed maximum price. If we go to the next slide. I think we skipped one. Just wanted to show the building. So we break the building up into different areas. There's A through G. The 3 areas in blue are the ones that are currently being worked on. So area A, which is the kindergarten wing, area B, which is the Discovery Lab, cafeteria. Over there you can see the work when you walk in.
Is that like the apple core?
Apple core would fall in area A, yep.
Oh, okay.
And then area G is the hump, that area. So I just wanted to tie back to the budget. We did lock in that guaranteed maximum price of $19.9 million. It doesn't include all the owner responsibilities like furniture and other items. But the one thing I did want to point out is our contingency. We did have 5% contingency so that was about $920,000 of contingency. To date, we still have about $900,000 left. So we've tapped into about 20,000 of the 920, so we're still in a good spot. Obviously, we're early, but we'll continue to update you on a quarterly basis. If you want to go, just got a couple pictures here. So area A, in the last month, so we've only broken ground here in the last month. They started doing selective demolition in area A, so the kindergarten wing. They framed up new classrooms, started in the progress of putting in drywall. The mechanical reinforcing steel is ready to be put on top of the rooftop, and we're scheduled to wrap all of that up by August 18th. So we're still on schedule for that. Next one, Area B. So this is our new Discovery Lab. So this picture is from a week or two ago. So Area B, in addition, includes the kitchen, and we did have that remain functional for summer school, which wrapped up on June 30th. We've also done some demolition here, and we have started framing of new walls, and that as well is scheduled to be completed August 18th, 2023. And then the hump, yep. Well, actually, this is the north side. This is where the maintenance building is going to be. So you can see that from the highway. So that will be wrapped up by December. So it's a little later than we were originally planning. But then obviously the hump is the other area where from the outside you can see. So the hump, both the north and south ends are probably the most visible from the public's perspective. We had to do abatement of asbestos and remediation there. We have had mechanical contractors reviewing to make sure we're being safe. And then on the north end, we've put up the site and silt fence installation. We've cleared the site and regraded. And then they've put in the utilities for the maintenance building. And they've got the footing excavation ready to proceed. And that area, the maintenance building will be done by December, and then Area G, the hump, is going to kind of go on throughout the school year because it's not actually connected to the building, so there shouldn't be any interruption for students. That will wrap up in June of 2024.
So they're scooting, actually.
Yeah. So far, knock on wood. I mean, we've had little hiccups, but nothing major.
I know they're working on Saturdays too. I drove by and
Yeah.
they're still working Saturdays. So that's, I mean.
So obviously we'll be doing this every 3 months. So this month, October, January, April, and then July of next year. But if there were anything immediate, urgent, super important, I'd bring that to the board at the most recent board meeting. So.
Oh, we're doing it in October, and I got my next update wrong.
Well,
so it's October.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
I was just going to
I
do it
can fix
quarterly.
it. That's
so.
fine. Yep.
Okay.
Before we do committee reports, we didn't put it in the slides, but I do want to speak to the safety stuff that you are doing. Can you just, because that is important to everyone in the strategic plans, the safety work that you have been doing.
Sure. So I've been partnering with Deputy Isaac, who is going to come in and do ALICE training with our entire staff so that we're prepared to respond in emergency situations. I've also been reviewing and revising our emergency response plan to include some updated language so that we can start teaching our staff common language and how to respond when certain things are said over the intercom or we have certain situations happening. So the administrative team is reviewing that plan in a couple of weeks here, I think, so that we can present some of those common language pieces and how to respond to the entire staff. I've also done some training with the Department of Justice through in talking about reunification. So if there were ever the need to evacuate, how would that process go? So I've been doing training, and that included school administrators and law enforcement. So we were all together doing a training for that process. So it's something that I'm kind of diving into right now, and I'm getting more training, and I'm also bringing those pieces back to our building as well.
Thank you for calling in on that. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was fair. That was necessary. We didn't have any committees, but we will, soon as the school year starts, have to restart the Citizens Advisory Council to update a policy looking at our retention and acceleration program. It's way outdated, and it's part of, that will require some heavy lifting, so.
Would that be a CAC?
That will need to be a
That would be
CAC.
a CAC,
Yeah.
okay.
So, okay.
We do have one more item. The next slide.
That's right.
It'll be a very short one.
Yeah, I forgot.
2 minutes or less.
Yes, I move that the board vote to go into closed session to be in the main office conference room right around the corner pursuant to the following statute, Wisconsin Statute 19.851C, considering employment promotion, compensation or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the government of Ohio has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, individual non-represented employee compensation. The board will reconvene in open session to take any action from closed session, and will we be coming back in here for that?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So moved. Second. Roll call. Jack? Aye. Steve?
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're in closed session.